and welcome back to the Footy Frontline podcast brought to you by My Betting Mate. My name's Nick DeBarno and I'm joined here today by Ollie Caffrey to take a look back at all the big talking points from round 14 and look ahead to round 15 in the AFL. Ollie, how's things?
Yeah, another big weekend of footy, some controversy, some big games, huge crowds at the MCG for Dusty. So, yeah, plenty of talking points.
Let's start with the controversy. It was Sunday afternoon. It was one of the best comebacks, I think, in AFL history, AFL VFL history, when Collingwood came back from 54 points down to beat the Kangas by a point. But there was a moment of controversy in the final minute or so where Bailey Scott took a mark just probably about 80 metres out from goal, and there was still Sidebottom and Beau McCreary that looked like they had stepped over the mark, but there was no 50-metre paid. It's created plenty of discussion. It feels like, basically this whole week ever since then has been dominated by the discourse that's come out from it. The AFL have come out and, interestingly enough, ticked off on it and said that there was, in fact, no issue with the decision being paid, but that the actual issue was that there was, no clear sort of like, it was more of an umpiring error, if that makes sense, from not actually calling a play on or a mark. So I guess, what do you think that come out of all this? Like, it just seems like it's more confusing now than what it was on Sunday when it initially happened.
It absolutely is. It's become a bigger issue because of how the AFL handled it. If they came out and said, like they have with other instances, that they made a mistake, it should have been a 50-metre penalty, and people move on.
Yeah.
But the way Laura Kane handled it on Monday, speaking to the AFL media website, didn't do a press conference, and that was a thing they spoke about in pre-season. Went to a media briefing with the AFL in the pre-season. They said they wanted to be more transparent under new leadership. Laura Kane, she came in last year. Andrew Dillon's been there a long time, obviously, but yeah, he's taken over the reins as CEO from Gil McLaughlin, and they really wanted to be more transparent and be more open to the media, but it seems to have regressed. They've gone backwards. And the way that was handled was really poor, seriously confusing. Everyone can see that was a mistake made by the umpire. It should have been a 50-metre penalty. Didn't matter if the umpire, whatever she said, should have been called play on. It was a mark. It was a mark. They ran straight to him. Those players made a mistake. It should have been a 50-metre penalty. And yeah, it's just become more of a talking point. Like you said, it's just bubbled away throughout the week because of how the AFL have handled it. We're at Wednesday now, we're recording on Wednesday, and it's still one of the bigger issues of the week. So, yeah, there's been umpiring mistakes throughout the season, but usually they have come out and said, yes, we made a mistake, clear mistake, everyone accepts that. The fans are still upset, but they move on. So, yeah, a few weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, you had the 3 games on the Saturday all decided by pretty contentious umpiring decisions in the last few minutes. And, yeah, they came out and explained those, and everyone's like, okay, like, that's what it is. But, yeah, seriously confusing the way they've handled that. And, yeah, North Melbourne supporters would be really filthy. Who knows? Bailey Scott might have got inside 50, might have shanked it, might have gone out on the floor, might have been another draw for Collingwood. So, you never know, but, yeah, what could have been for North Melbourne.
So Laura Kane came out and said it was a confusing situation and I understand why people are left wanting to understand what happened. One of the 2 calls could be made. It could be play on immediately or it could be stand, which of course is, to tell the player on the mark stand with this new stand rule that's come in the last few years, which would indicate that the mark had been paid. Neither of those 2 calls occurred in the immediate moments after the whistle was blown, and Bailey took 4 steps or so inbound and looks to have played on. The correct call should have been play on initially. That has caused confusion for the players in the immediate vicinity, being the Collingwood players, Steele Sidebottom and Beau McCreary, that there was a delay and that she believes that it was a communication error at the end of the day. So, I mean, there were a few moments in that game where there was some contentious miscommunication moments with the umpires in the first quarter as well, when Harry Sheasel looked to have won a free kick and then the umpire played advantage for a Collingwood free kick when like Harry Sheasel clearly won a free kick in the pocket. And this was another one of those moments. There was another controversial moment where Jack Crisp kicked a goal early in the game, again involving Bailey Scott, where it looks like he had touched it. Laura Kane came out and also said that the AFL and the ARC ticked off on it and said that it was inconclusive and that it was a goal. But yeah, it was just one of those games where it felt like there was a number of decisions that were just that are going to be discussed for quite some time. And it's a shame because, you know, it was an unbelievable game of footy, one of the games of the season, but we're not talking about the comeback. We're talking about the umpiring decisions. But to put it full circle, I think at the end of the day, North Melbourne were 54 points in front and shouldn't have been in a position where one umpiring decision in the final minute. That's the one we're talking about that quote unquote cost them the game, because that game was over. It was there for them to be won, regardless of its first versus or the reigning premiers against last on the ladder right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, North Melbourne, there's no way they should have let that slip. Collingwood just really we've seen this so many times under Craig McRae. They just never as far back as that. It's usually been about 5, probably 6 goals max. I don't think they've come back from more than 6 goals before up until Sunday. So it was a monumental effort. Their midfield just got going, especially in that last quarter. Dominated out of the centre. North Melbourne, it's probably their strength in the midfield, and they just could do nothing. Like even still side bottom, turned back the clock. It just was superb out of the middle. Yeah, it was a inspiring performance to come back from that far. I know it is only against North Melbourne, but you still have to come back from 54 points down. A lot of teams wouldn't be able to do that. And the game did look over. North Melbourne were playing great footy. They were so accurate. They just couldn't miss. In that first half, it was just ridiculous. Every single shot was going through. Tristan Cherry, a ruckman who was just drilling goals from about 50 metres out. And you thought, this could be North Melbourne's day. Everything's going right for them up until the last quarter with those decisions. And yeah, the Jack Crisp one, like how could you possibly tell? It looked touched, but the technology we have, it's just so outdated. It just frustrates me so much that they just are not willing to upgrade the technology around the grounds. Another thing they spoke about in the media briefing at the start of the year was, okay, like the technology is changing all the time. If we upgrade, we have to do it for every single AFL ground, even the ones that only might host like 1-2 games a season, Alice Springs, Darwin, those sort of grounds as well. But just do it. Yeah. The AFL is just flush with cash. Isn't it better just to have the technology there and there's never going to be any question about if it's a goal, or if it's touched or whatever? Like I think the fans, players, everyone deserves to have that clarity. We don't want technology from the 90s. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like you couldn't tell. Like all those shots, all those different angles, you couldn't possibly be confirmed that that was a goal or if it was touched or whatever. It's just so frustrating.
But we've seen this. I mean, there's been a number of decisions, especially with goal line technology. Throughout. Remember last year, that Carlton-Melbourne game in particular, which robbed Melbourne of a win. End of the season, which looked like a clear goal, but the umpires, the arc went with inconclusive when it looked like from us watching on that it was
definitely a goal. Definitely a goal.
You know, and at the end of the day, that robbed Melbourne of 4 points. You know, it was a crucial time of the year for both those sides. Imagine that this sort of thing happens in finals time. I mean, you know, it's funny because we've got this technology which is so outdated, and then you know we're looking a couple of days ago on the other side of the world at the Euros at the moment where they've upgraded to Snicko for handballs, which is almost over. You know, it's over the top.
Exactly.
You know, we've got 90s quality cameras off a Nokia versus this upgraded incredible technology. So you do wonder, like, you know, what is the middle ground? Because you have to think that there has to be better cameras available. There has to be better technology available.
100% is better cameras. They're just not willing to spend the money.
They've got to do it, you know.
They have to do it. We've been saying this for so long, but it just becomes more and more frustrating when every year it comes around and the pitches are still terrible.
Or just don't have it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's either, you know, I feel like we've got to go all out or you don't have it at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then it just becomes over officiated. We've seen goal umpires right now losing. It feels like they've lost their confidence as well when it comes to some decisions too.
Sure.
Like they are asking for score reviews when we can clearly see it's not hit the post or it's not been
stands
touched.
or on TV.
Yeah, and you're like, what the hell's going on here? So anyways, enough about umpiring decisions. It's a shame that we're talking about it because there's been so much good footy, and one of the great storylines over the last few weeks has been the rise of Hawthorn, who at the start of the year, it looked like they were in dire straits, but in the last few weeks, they've won their last 4, they've won 6 of their last 7. Arguably, they should have won their last 7 games.
They should have.
Should have definitely won their last 7 games. But they got themselves a win against Richmond in a game that, as much as Richmond only won 2 games, with Dusty's 300th, you felt that the Tigers would really respond. But they were brilliant on Saturday. They're now 2 points outside the top 8. They are closing and closing fast. And it's not only just looking like they could get in and cause some problems if they are there in September this year.
Yeah, it's unbelievable the turnaround they've had. I was at the MCG probably about 8 weeks ago now. They got absolutely obliterated by Sydney. Sydney's done that to a lot of teams this year, but they just look like a bottom 4 team. And you thought, okay, it's going to be another long year for the Hawks. The supporters in the stands were just like, oh, here we go again, another terrible year. But since that game, they've just been incredible. And we both tipped Richmond for this game on Saturday. Just Dusty's 300th, Tom Lynch back, the Tiger Army really came out in droves. And when they all rocked up, I don't think anyone... we expected a big turnout for Dusty, probably 80,000, but when it got to 92,000...
Incredible.
You thought, this is like a finals-like atmosphere. Will Hawthorn, they're a pretty young team, will they handle that sort of cauldron? But, yeah, they just did it with ease, just completely blew Richmond off the park. Dusty kicked the first goal of the game, and then after that, it was all Hawthorn. And just really assured in all areas of the ground. And, yeah, it's just extraordinary what they've done under Sam Mitchell. They've still got some guys to come back to. Mitchell Lewis is still not there, but their forward line's functioning beautifully. Guys that you thought weren't capable. Marby Chol has been an absolute find. You thought, okay, coming from the Gold Coast, he spent most of the second half of the season in the VFL, and he's been really inconsistent. His best is really good, but yeah, he's been such a find for them, and they'd be really happy that they've got him to the club. So yeah, they can absolutely sneak into the top 8. They can beat anyone on their day. Like we've seen, they beat Collingwood and Brisbane last year, beat the Lions again this year. So yeah, like you said before, should have won 7 in a row, should have been Port Adelaide in Adelaide, blew that game, but yeah, they're so dangerous.
Well, look at their run home. I mean, they play 5 top 8 teams. They do play Collingwood again in a few weeks' time, which will be a great barometer test for them. But they play each of the bottom 4 teams as well during this run. They do come back from the bye and play West Coast away, which will be the Harley Reid homecoming game. You know, they're going to have to deal with all the fanfare that comes with that. And, you know, the papers are going to be up and about. Superman returns, everything like that. But these 9 games, it's a good split. Like, they get a chance to test themselves against some really good teams. And some of those teams in the 8 are underperforming, like they're playing a Geelong side that have been out of form as well. A Fremantle team, I'm pretty sure, as well, that have been a bit hit and miss.
So inconsistent.
You know, and then the 4 bottom 10 teams, you know, the likes of North Melbourne, West Coast, Richmond, they could easily make the finals. But not only make the finals, given how tight it is, they could theoretically host a final, which would be massive.
That'd be ridiculous.
And, you know, there's a bit of, I think, like, the best way, there's a bit of GWS, like last year, with their momentum at the moment about them.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm feeling like with each passing game that there's more and more confidence that they're actually going to get there, which would just be incredible, you know, if they're able to pull it off.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And, yeah, you spoke about they're playing Collingwood again. Almost pinched that game at the Adelaide Oval early in the year.
Probably should have as well.
The first month or so, you thought, okay, they're just nowhere, Hawthorn. But, yeah, they've just come along in just been incredible.
Yeah.
Just the younger players have stood up. Will Day's been such a big inclusion. He was injured early in the season, but, yeah, he's a genuine superstar of the competition now. Won a best and fairest last season. He's still only so young, but, yeah, he's a superb player.
Well, let's move on and have a look at round 15. All the action does kick off again on Friday night. No Thursday night footy for the rest of the year, but it's a big one on Friday. Carlton take on the Cats for the second time this year. Both these teams coming off the bye. They played an absolute classic in a Saturday twilight game earlier this year. The Cats got up just in that game, but Carlton were fast finishing. But ever since then, the tide has turned a lot. Geelong, I think, have only won once since then. Carlton are now sitting in second. They're looking quite, starting to find their straps, starting to get players back. This is shaping up as a huge game for both these teams. A chance for Carlton to really make a statement, but a chance for Geelong, conversely, to show we're still here and we're still going to be putting, the competition on notice in the second half of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. It is only about 8 weeks ago since these teams met, which is just crazy the way the fixturing works. Yeah. And then that was a superb game, that one. Patrick Dangerfield went down with the hamstring injury in that game, but he'll be back for this game on Friday night. So a huge boost for the Cats. They've really missed him in that midfield. Yeah, it's still a young midfield at the Cats, and at times they've just been blown away there. and he will give them a huge boost. So, but Carlton are looking really strong. They've got their act together, a bit of a form slump there for a while, but yeah, a huge opportunity to make amends for that game. They almost pinched. It was a really tight tussle, but yeah, Geelong just looked almost unbeatable at that point. Carlton played pretty well that night, but Geelong's defence stood up really well, and then their attacking output was really nice too. So, yeah, just some of their really good players at the moment are just down on form, the Cats. So maybe the bye is coming at a good time. Usually they don't play well off a bye, Geelong, but I think this time it's coming at a really good time. Yeah, Jeremy Cameron's been down on form. Even Tom Stewart, who we thought is probably the worst form slump of his career at the moment.
Wonder if he gets the Chincotta tag this week as well, you know? Yeah, that's become sort of the new thing. He's looking very good in that new role.
Absolutely, yeah. Potentially Dangerfield as well. He might just get a bit of attention coming back in, just test out his body. But yeah, I think Carlton and the MCG, they went close 8 weeks ago, and they're in better form now. Geelong's in worse form, so I think Geelong never play well off the bye. So I'm going to go with Carlton.
This is a tough one because I'm still waiting for that response from Geelong. I mean, we saw it for about a half against Sydney, and then they just got blown out. Seems like everyone's just getting blown out by Sydney in these quick bursts, as Adelaide found out last week. I think there'll be a response from Geelong, but I don't think it'll be enough to win this game. I feel like they'll push Carlton very close, but I think Carlton at the moment, with the momentum that they've got, coming out of the bye as well, a chance to freshen up. We saw last year after coming out of the bye that they just went to another level. Of course, it was very different fortunes around that time, but they just kicked on to an incredible finish to the year, and I think the Baggers will get up in this game. But my tip still, I think Jeremy Cameron hit some form in this game. He had a really good game last time these two teams met, and I think he kicks multiple goals. Saturday afternoon at Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide versus Brisbane. This is another really fascinating contest because Port Adelaide... I was looking forward to that game against GWS on Sunday.
I was really looking forward to it.
But then it turned into an absolute snooze fest on Sunday evening. A really disappointing showing from Port Adelaide on Sunday against the Giants. But Brisbane, in a game that I thought was going to be the complete opposite, was going to be a snooze fest against the Saints, turned into one of the games of the round where they were pushed right to the line
shootout. Ross Lyon shootout. You never see that.
Who would have thought St Kilda would kick over 100 points, in a game? It's incredible.
Biggest score of the season, and they lost.
This is a weird year.
Crazy.
It's a very, very weird year. But these two teams meet this weekend on Saturday. It's a big game for the Lions, a real chance for them to start to close the gap on the top 8. But Port Adelaide, they need to respond. It feels like with them that there's this win-loss situation going on with them, and they'd be chomping at the bit to bounce back at home.
Absolutely. Back at home, I think a lot of teams have been going through the win-loss recently. So, yeah, a genuine 50-50 game, this one. But probably going to lean towards Port just because it's at home, and crucial win at the tribunal for the Power. Zach Butters got off, the one game ban. So if he was out, that would have swung the odds definitely in Brisbane's favour. But with him playing, that gives them a huge boost. So the Lions, if they can pinch this one on the road though, their draw does open up quite a bit. More games at home. They've started to put together some good form there, and they're just looking. 2 wins in a row now. They looked a lot better in the last their form actually stacks up really well in the last 8 weeks. Since they started the season dreadfully, lost the first 3 games and just in an absolute rut there. They've been actually, I think they're probably 3rd on the ladder from the last 8 games. I saw that. So, the Lions will go over there with a lot of confidence and a huge chance, but I think Port might just pinch it, and they'll be celebrating the 20-year anniversary of the one and only premiership, Port. They're wearing the old school jumpers from 2004. So, it should be a pretty big crowd there for a Saturday afternoon game. But, it should be an absolute ripper.
Old school jumpers, but I don't think we're going to be getting any sort of fights like we did back in the 2004 grand final. I don't think there's too much jeopardy for what comes next. I don't think we're getting any Alistair Lynch, Darryl Wakeland moments in this one.
Geez, if someone did that these days, they've got 30 weeks.
Oh, probably, especially like someone up like
Lynch,
that.
Lynch, got 10 weeks for that.
Yeah, well,
didn't
luckily
even land.
Well, lucky enough, he wasn't even retiring.
Yeah,
he wasn't playing another game after that. It was all there to be, just whatever in that game. I actually think Brisbane win this game. as much as, Port did win this exact fixture last year in round one, at Adelaide Oval, they beat them quite convincingly. We saw Brisbane did beat Port Adelaide quite easily in the qualifying final last year. I think you mentioned it. Brisbane are in some really good form at the moment. And if they are able to come away with a win against Port Adelaide, that will just kick
huge.
them on for the rest of the season. It will also be a bit of a statement of intent. I think the win against the Bulldogs was a good win away, but getting a win in Adelaide against the Port Adelaide team that are pretty good at home, historically, this would be a massive result for them. And I think they get the job done. And that just puts more pressure on Port Adelaide because they just haven't convinced anybody, because we've seen sometimes they look pretty good. And then there's these games they just serve up a stink fest. And, I can't really get a read on what the go is.
No, I can't either.
They're making wholesale changes in their forward line. I mean, they had Charlie Dixon and Jeremy Finlayson playing. Now Charlie Dixon's is suspended. And Jeremy Finlayson playing in the SANFL. I mean, we don't know what the makeup of this Port team is at the moment. It's wholesale changes after wholesale changes, and I think the Lions get up in this game. So Melby Boyd going into then, I think the following week, where they might get a certain Will Ashcroft back very soon
Melbourne,
as well.
He's back the week after. So, if they can win this and then get Will Ashcroft back for a game against Melbourne, who are obviously really wounded at the moment, it sets up the season pretty nicely.
Absolutely. Well, another huge contest on Saturday evening at NG Stadium. It's a Sydney derby, GWS versus Sydney. Any chance now for GWS to make a bit of a statement and really, stick it to the best? This is the one against the Sydney team who they've been incredible. And on last Saturday night, Joel Amartey, where did that come from? I mean, there was a fascinating article the AFL put up on their website today about those anomaly bags that you see players who once in a blue moon will kick a bag, and you never see it again. And I feel like as much as I really like Joel Amartey, 9 goals? I don't think I was ever expecting that. But what a game it was and what a performance it was. But do you give GWS a chance against the Swans on Saturday?
I give them a chance just because these games, traditionally the underdog can get up. It's happened quite a bit in the last 4 or 5 years. The Giants have scored some big wins against the Swans when they haven't expected to. They've won all their finals. They've played 3 times in finals, incredibly, and the Giants have won them all. So, they would love nothing more than just to inflict a bit of pain on the Swans, who are just, they're just flying. You thought, okay, game on the road, they're 3 games clear on top of the ladder. You would forgive them for a shock loss. They were playing poorly in that first half. Adelaide looked like they come to play, but the Swans in that second half just put the foot on the floor and just completely destroyed the Crows. That was just as powerful performance as you'll see. And Joel Amartey, he kicked his previous best before that game was 4 goals in a game, and then he kicked 4 goals in the second quarter, another 4 in the third quarter, and then he's probably robbed a 10. They took him off twice in the last quarter.
Benched him.
Oh, he just tried to make a statement, I think. It's just no one's bigger than the team. No one's just don't want to get ahead of himself. But, I'm going to tip the Giants in an upset just because I think the Swans are due.
Yeah.
You just look at the ladder and there's 3 games and so much percentage clear. So it's effectively 4 games. It'd just be natural for them to drop off a bit. And the Giants, they're playing not great at the moment. They've gone into a bit of a form slump. They were so good at the start of the season. But, I can see this is the game where they really show their intent for the second half of the season and show they're serious about getting back deep into finals and getting a few players back now as well. Josh Kelly, really important since he's come back. Stephen Cornelio potentially coming back in. So, I'm going to tip the Giants in a bit of an upset.
It's an interesting one because I do think that if GWS win this game, as you said, it would set them up perfectly. And I feel like as much as Sydney have been so good at closing these games, you said, you feel like that loss is coming and it might be needed. It might be needed just to sort of all right, it's a get right moment. We have a bit of a slump. We've been so good all year. If they did lose even this game, as much as it is against a rival, you'd almost go, okay, fair enough. You can't go perfect. Every good team, every minor Premier always has that one slip up. So, I'm going to back the Giants as well. I think they get up. It's going to be a tightly fought contest. I think they just get over the line this one. Tom Green, though, looking good for 25 plus in this one too. And in the last game back before Lachie Neale as well, looking good for 25 plus. Saturday night, Melbourne versus North Melbourne. Now, after Sunday, I gotta say, I'm These odds, I don't know how it's so blown out, because I get this feeling North Melbourne be coming into this game with all the confidence in the world against a team like Melbourne, who would be down in the dumps right now. I know they're coming off the bye, a chance to refresh, but arguably without one of their best players in Christian Petrarca. There's been all the talk coming out of it about, him coming back onto the field, reports of his, family not being too happy with, the whole situation surrounding it. We saw Max Gawn go on radio and address it as well. But the Kangas really made a statement, despite not getting over the line against the Pies, that they are not going to be an easy beat for anyone in the second half of the year. Do you think they get the job done against Melbourne?
I don't think they do, but hopefully they're more competitive in the second half of the season. They were really good in the first couple of weeks, and I think maybe that game against Freo, when they blew a big lead, they looked like they were going to win that game. They were 5 goals up during the second quarter, and then the confidence was just shot after that. And you can't really blame them for the last 5, 6, 7 seasons. They've just been horrible. They've barely won any games. So the confidence was just shot there. And just to get that first win against West Coast, it was ugly. It went down to the wire. But, yeah, they look like a different side coming out against Collingwood. They were just playing with this attacking flair. They look confident. They look ready to take the game on. And, yeah, obviously when Collingwood came at them, a lot of way better teams than North Melbourne can fold against Collingwood when the surge is on. So, yeah, like, even though they lost, and they would be heartbroken, North Melbourne supporters, getting so close, they would have taken a lot of heart out of that. And, yeah, hopefully for the Roos supporters, they can have a better second half of the season. But I think Melbourne, after a bye, bit of a chance for a reset. I know no Petrarca, that's just huge. He's their second best player. Max Gawn's their best player, most important player, but easily their second best player, Petrarca, especially this year. And they're going to miss him in the midfield. He's kicked a lot of goals this year too. He's pushed forward. So I think Melbourne, just because the season's on the line, if they lose this, they're done.
Oh, yeah.
They're absolutely done. So I think a bit of a reset, and Melbourne will get the job done, but it won't be easy. It might be 4 or 5 goals.
I think North push them even closer. I think they really give them a scare, because my concern still goes back to Melbourne's ability to kick a score.
Yeah.
And North showed last week was a bit of an anomaly with how accurate they were, but they showed when they get a run on, they can kick goals. I mean, Nick Larkey had a great first quarter. You mentioned Tristan Cherry. They had others being able to get on the scoreboard as well. Even Toby Pink scored one of the most awkward set shots you'll ever see. But it seems like they've found a nice mix of, midfield. They've found a good sort of mix in the forward line as well, with Curtis and Ford. And defensively, they looked a little bit tighter, as much as Collingwood, when they got a run on, they really got a run on them. And, as you said, there's not many teams that can stop the sort of the wave when Collingwood get going. The D's get up in this one. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be a game that makes you go, Melbourne are back. But I think that there'll be more green shoots shown from the Kangas. I initially had Luke Davies-Uniacke for 25 plus in this game, but if he's under an injury cloud for this one, I'm going to say instead Nick Larkey for multiple goals. I think he has another really good game against the D's, but the D's just get up. Sunday afternoon at Marvel Stadium, Essendon against West Coast. Both teams coming back off the bye this week. No Harley Reid again for West Coast this week, serving the final game of his suspension. The Bombers have lost back-to-back games. West Coast have also lost back-to-back games. I mean, at home, Essendon really should have no problems here against West Coast.
Oh, if Essendon don't win by more than 10 goals, they're kidding themselves. West Coast on the road have been atrocious.
Yeah.
No Harley Reid, as you mentioned. Yeah, I can't see this going any other way than a big Essendon win, especially after the 2 losses they had before the bye. They'd be really determined. So they would have been stewing on that over the bye. And, yeah, I think a bit of a freshen up will do them good. And Marvel Stadium, it could get ugly. It could get ugly. Cole Langford, he got there for multiple goals. I think he could kick a lot of goals.
Yeah.
Could be 5 or 6 sort of areas, I reckon. So, yeah, Essendon, they just have to do it, and they will.
I think that it should be quite comprehensive. I'd be disappointed if I was an Essendon supporter, they didn't win big.
Yeah.
The last few times they have played West Coast, though,
true.
They have not, they have not been easy.
And at Marvel Stadium last year too.
They should have lost that game at Marvel Stadium last year.
There was only a goal in it, I think.
Yeah, I think they kicked a couple goals late. They were losing late.
Yeah, they were losing in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was a different point where Essendon's season had really fallen to bits.
Yeah.
We know after the bye last year that was when they started to really capitulate. And I think that, there'd be a lot of communication internally. I know last year they went into the bye with a lot more momentum. But this time around, you think that the senior players and Brad Scott, they would have learned from last year's mistakes and be hoping that they can start strong and continue that, because they have some really tough games against Geelong and then Collingwood in the 2 weeks after. So I think the Bombers do get this win here against West Coast and then set up 2 huge games the following week. The round finishes in Perth. Fremantle against the Gold Coast Suns. Fremantle very disappointing against the Western Bulldogs. We both picked Fremantle to actually beat the Dogs last week.
Yeah, I said it was juicy odds for Freo. Yeah. That went completely out the window. They were abysmal.
Yeah, they were blown out of the water. And Gold Coast off the bye, they were really disappointing against St Kilda in their last game before the bye. They've been really disappointing really anywhere away from Gold Coast or Darwin this year. Do you think that it ends for them, or do you think Fremantle respond with a win?
I think Freo respond at home. Yeah, as you mentioned, away from home, they have just been a different team. They've been so good at home. Like, they've barely been... Well, there've been a couple of close games at home, but, yeah, they've been super impressive and just look like a totally different side when they go on the road. Lost against St Kilda before the bye. That was really frustrating game for everyone, I think. And, yeah, I think going over there, one of the longest... Well, it is the longest trip in footy. 5-6 hours on the plane. So, yeah, I think Freo, they've been a bit up and down as well, like a lot of teams. You go from smashing Melbourne by 90-plus points and looking incredible and then just getting blown away by the Bulldogs, who the Bulldogs came to play. They were really good. But, yeah, I think Freo back at home, the midfield it'll be a great midfield battle, I've got to say. Yeah, 2 young midfielders just going at it. Yeah, it could be a ripper contest there, but... Yeah, I think Freo would be too strong.
Yeah, I don't see Gold Coast winning this game. Funnily enough, I'd feel more confident actually tipping Gold Coast the following week when they're at home playing Collingwood because,
I'll tip them then.
Absolutely, because, you feel like they're at home, as much as Collingwood will be getting players back off the bye, it's just, as you spoke about, it's the complete 180 when they're away from home. And I think that's something Damien Hardwick would be just so frustrated about because they've shown that at home they can compete with anybody. But once they leave sort of whether it's Gold Coast or Darwin, because Darwin's sort of their home away from home, they're just a completely different side. So if they're able to win this, though, it would be a huge statement of intent. And it would just send Fremantle's season, I think, to a bit of a tailspin because they'd probably fall out of the 8. They'd be, not in that, they'd be in that sort of no man's land of like they're in, they're out 1 week, So I think the Dockers, though, get up in probably by about 4 or 5 goals. And I think Caleb Sarong for 25 plus disposals in this game as well. That's all we've got for today. We'll be back again next week to review all the round 15 action and look ahead to round 16. We'll finally have 9 games back of footy to dive into. So looking forward to diving into all that. Ollie, thank you very much for joining me once again.
Thanks, Nick.